Adrian Wojnarowski, captain of Team No Sleep, right about now as we get closer and closer to that free agency period beginning. You know, Woj, as we get closer to these meetings between teams and players, it seems like some of these storylines are starting to play out, including one that maybe some people didn't expect, with the possibility that Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard could be teaming up.
Well, as Ramona Shelburne and I reported earlier today, they've been talking. And listen, when you have two players of this caliber who are out in the marketplace and have a couple teams in common that they're going to take meetings with, have an interest in, it only makes sense that they'd have those conversations to see if there's something that might make sense together. Now, the team that they're both going to talk with are the Clippers and the New York Knicks. Now, New York is a pretty unlikely destination for Kawhi Leonard. I think if he's going to leave Toronto, it's going to be to go back west. But certainly it's a conversation that has gone on, and it adds to the intrigue of this free agency.
Oh, totally. You get two superstar players like that talking to the same team. Everyone is all up in arms about it. Speaking of superstar players maybe going somewhere, Jimmy Butler. Of course, you reported that the Rockets really want him, but they would need some help, of course, from the Sixers to make that happen. But there's also another team in play for Jimmy Butler, and that's Miami. Yeah,
Miami, who tried very hard to trade for him earlier in the season. Came pretty close to some deals with Minnesota. Obviously, he went to Philadelphia eventually.
Right.
But right now, Jimmy Butler has wanted a 5-year max deal from the Sixers. It's unclear if that's going to be available to him there. The Sixers have not ruled out working with him, his agent, to do a sign-and trade. Now, Miami, Houston, they don't have salary cap space, so they need Philadelphia's help to either take back contracts or redirect them to third teams. But Jimmy Butler, I'm told, is in South Florida tonight. He'll meet with the Miami Heat on Sunday when free agency opens sometime after 6 o'clock.
Even Dwayne Wade mentioned Jimmy Butler today on Twitter, so I'm sure South Florida is excited about that. Woj coming back a little bit later. We've got some other big names out there that may be going elsewhere. That's coming up here on SportsCenter. Thanks, Woj.
Thanks, Mike.
Point guard carousel is very interesting because Kyrie was the big name coming out and determine what happens with other players. So let's start with him. Clearly leaving Boston, headed most likely where?
Well, Kyrie Irving is going to meet with the Brooklyn Nets Sunday after 6 p.m. There's confidence on both sides that they will be able to get a deal done that would bring Irving to Brooklyn. 4 years, $141 million max deal. And Brooklyn's plan has always been twofold. To get Kevin Durant with Kyrie Irving. Step one of that is to try to nail down a deal with Irving on Sunday.
So if Kyrie, hypothetically, goes to the Nets, that does what for D'Angelo Russell?
Well, one of two options for he and the Nets together.
Okay.
They can renounce him, allow him to become an unrestricted free agent. He's restricted now. They can match any offer sheet. Or if there's a sign-and-trade that makes sense for the Nets where there's something they'd like to get back from a team and they could help Russell get to a team he'd like to go to that perhaps doesn't have cap space, like a Minnesota hypothetically, they can do that. But the Lakers reached out to D'Angelo's agents today. They have the cap space to be able to bring him back. And I'm told there's an interest on D'Angelo Russell's behalf to listen and perhaps, see to fruition a reunion.
That would be interesting because the Lakers cap space money, they could get D'Angelo Russell and maybe another player, smaller salary, but still someone who could come in and contribute. So let's bring this back full circle. So Kyrie's gone from Boston. As you've been mentioning, Kemba Walker and Boston seem to be something that's going to happen as soon as that deadline hits, that opening hits on Sunday.
Yeah, Kemba Walker is in New England. He's in Boston. He'll meet with the Celtics at 6 p.m. They'll nail down that deal. 4 years, $141 million. He slides right into Kyrie Irving's old job, and that's going to be your Boston Celtics point guard. And then that puts them back, I think, in that upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. That's still a very formidable team, and he brings a level of leadership, professionalism that I think Boston's really craving from that point guard spot. They couldn't have rebounded any better from losing Kyrie Irving.
And that'll be a huge hit in the New England era, of course, a standout at the University.
KD, Kawhi, Kyrie, Klay, Kemba, the main event in free agency. Teams are free to conduct meetings and make offers starting tomorrow at 6 Eastern. But don't sleep on the undercard.
No, stay very woke. Dynasties have been built on finding diamonds in the rough. Here's a look at what free agents are under the radar and how they compare to current and past big-name free agents.
Kawhi Leonard or Kemba Walker.
it was actually Nikola Vucevic, who ranked just behind Anthony Davis and ahead of LeBron James. The other is NBA champion Danny Green, one of 8 players to have an offensive and defensive real plus-minus above 2.
3 is good! Danny Green!
Other key names to keep an eye on are Terrence Ross, J.J. Redick, and Bojan Bogdanovic. They all scored at highly efficient rates this past season, ranking in the top 6 in points per touch among 173 players with at least 2,500 touches. The other 3 players that ranked in the top 6 were all-stars: Leonard, Paul George, and Klay Thompson. Another summer of chaos is upon us. More than 200 free agents with potentially $2 billion to be spent. Sometimes, all it takes is one under-the-radar move, separating a franchise from a championship. So, which teams have the space to land some of these under-the-radar free agents? Well, if the Knicks strike out on KD and all of the marquee names, they'll have a league-high $70 million to spread around, with the Nets not too far behind.
But those numbers are astounding.
Yeah.
All right,
Breaking news this morning on SportsCenter. Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard have been talking amongst themselves about their futures and possibly playing together. That report from our agent Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne. The Clippers and the Knicks have the salary cap space to sign both. Now, that's the breaking news. If KD and Kawhi do join forces, then that team would have 2 of the 3 active players to win multiple Finals MVP awards. They both won the award the last 3 years, with KD winning in 17 and 18 before Kawhi taking home the award earlier this month. Back now with our NBA front office insider, Bobby Marks. All right, Bobby, show us how all this would work. Start with the Knicks.
The Knicks are the simple math right now, and this is easy. So we're going to start with a player like Kawhi Leonard. That leaves you with $38 million for a player like Kevin Durant, who also makes $38 million. I told you we're going to start easy here, and that gets you right there. You'd have a little bit money left over for maybe a minimum player, and then you'd have to fill out your roster. But here is your young players, and remember, Durant likely out for most of the year. And when we pivot and we talk about, we'll put these guys back in the free agency, and we talk about the Clippers here. Now, the Clippers have a little bit more work to do, but there is a path to get there. And what they're going to do here, well, first they're going to renounce a player like Patrick Beverley. See the money, it's going up. Mm-hmm. They're going to, Rodney McGruder has a qualifying offer. Ivica Zubac has a qualifying offer. Sindarius Thornwell and Tyrone Wallace are going to be waived. And that gets you to $56 million. You're still not at that magic number of 70. And when you put in a player like Kevin Durant, right, $19 million. So who's the odd man out? Danilo Gallinari. Mm-hmm. He goes out. That gets you back to 41. And now you slide Kawhi Leonard in, and you still got $9 million left in room here. And Gallinari, you don't have to find a trade partner for him. You can stretch his money out over 3 years and still have enough room to sign both players.
Yeah, they said whatever. Now I'm just talking. You should score. I'm going in.
Oh, we're going in. We got a ton of news to report from Woj, straight off his Twitter feed, hot off the presses. Let's start with Kemba Walker. Woj, the first to report. He'll finalize and agree to a $141 million deal, Kemba, with the Boston Celtics. He'll be in Boston on Sunday to finalize the deal. And obviously, if the Celtics are about to lose Kyrie Irving, more on that in a second, and Al Horford, this should obviously give them some firepower, though this is obviously a huge blow to Michael Jordan. Remember, this guy was able to make an all-NBA team and got himself a nice, hefty payday. So what is the comparison if Irving is out and Walker is in? I mean, take a look at the stats. They're pretty much identical. One guy brings a little more baggage than the other, Tony. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
And we should also mention here that the Celtics left for dead, right, on draft night. What are the Celtics going to do? Looks like they've got a solution for Danny Ainge and company. Now, I mentioned Kyrie Irving. According to Woj, Nets meeting with them Sunday. They're going to try to finalize a 4-year, $141 million deal. That would make, of course, Russell expendable. It could possibly be a trade. They could renounce his rights. And Russell has already set up a meeting with the Los Angeles Lakers. The team that drafted him could be a second foray for him there. So Kyrie to Brooklyn and Russell possibly out. More moves according to the NBA's best insider. Jimmy Butler expected to meet with the Heat and the Rockets, and it should be Derrick Rose agreeing quickly to a 2-year deal with the Detroit Pistons on Sunday. Keep in mind at the bottom of your screen, if the Sixers have to move Butler in a signing trade, they're willing to do that as well. Remember, the Houston Rockets and Daryl Morey have said he is their #1 target. The more Woj tweets, the more we'll have it for you here.